which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we are now at open forum. Kristen, do you have anything for open forum tonight?
I do, if the board doesn't have anything first.
Well, why don't you lead off and we'll
Sure.
go to the board.
Okay. A few items on behalf of the Land Use Management Department related to upcoming events that we are getting up on our website and through social media. So this Friday, January 16th, 2026 at 10:30 a.m., the Land Use Management Department, the Building Department, and the Health Department will be providing an overview of the recent changes regarding accessory dwelling units regulations, and will be available for questions to anyone who's interested in learning more about planning for or potentially building an ADU on their property. This will be held at the Cameron Senior Center, again at 10:30 a.m. Light refreshments will be served, and we ask that you RSVP to the Senior Center. I won't read the number here, but please visit our website to RSVP. On Saturday, January 24th, at Neshoba Valley Technical High School from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., there will be a public workshop for our Linked and Livable Neighborhoods, the Littleton Road Pedestrian Plan. This project is funded through the MBTA Communities Catalyst Fund, and it's helped to create a plan that will enhance our pedestrian and bicyclist infrastructure in and around the town's McMod area to support existing businesses and transform some of our suburban office areas into a more thriving mixed-use district. Lunch will be provided to anyone who registers before January 20th, so please visit the website. That newsflash went out today. And then finally, on Tuesday, January 27th, 2026, at the Senior Center, there'll be a workshop from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. on the ongoing Route 40 corridor study. This project is funded through the Housing Choice Grant, through the state's Community One Stop for Growth program, and the Route 40 corridor project seeks to establish a vision and guide development projects and municipal investment in that area. So 3 opportunities for the public to get involved in person at these events.
Great, thank you. Anything from the board tonight for open forum? I might just mention that we are in budget season, and that means on Thursday nights you are invited to participate with us in budget review. And I should have identified what the topics were this week. Kristen, do you
I
want
can
to
help. So this week is public safety with the exception of police. So it would be fire, ambulance, and public telecommunicators, and some of our health and human services departments, veterans, COA, and animal control will be there as well.
Great. And should anyone, any member of the public want to prepare a bit, you can go and log into Finance Committee meetings on the meeting calendar, log into the one for this Thursday, and there's a whole bunch of questions that our very astute Finance Committee has already asked and received answers for, I should say. So a great way to come up to speed on how the mechanism of government works and ideas that we have to be more efficient. Anything else? Any members of the public or anybody online have anything for open forum tonight?
I don't see anything online.
Okay. With that, we'll move to our 705 issue, which is the consent agenda. Request to approve the following. The first is a banner request from the annual Scout Troop Bike and Sporting Goods Sale. The applicant is Westford Boy Scout Troop 437, Barbara Evangelista on behalf of the troop. The date is April 27, 2026 to May 4, 2026, and the location is J.B. Fletcher Library. Second is a sandwich board request. The event is the annual Scout Troop Bike and Sporting Goods Sale. Same event, same applicant, and the date is April 28th, 2026 to May 2nd, 2026. The third is a town common bandstand request. And the event is again the annual Scout Troop and Bike Sporting Goods Sale. Same applicant as the previous 2. The date is May 2nd, 2026. And the fourth, and the time is 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. And the fourth is request for the Strawberry Arts Festival. The applicant is First Parish Church United. The date is Saturday, June 20th, 2026, so the rain date is Sunday, June 21st, 2026. The time is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and the bandstand request time is 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And I'll request a motion to approve. Unless there are any questions. Any questions first? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next item is a public hearing, so we'll enter the public hearing in just a second, but this public hearing is related to the liquor licenses conversion.
I'll save you some time.
Yeah.
We're
I see.
rescheduling that to
It's
January
right here.
26th. That's
Yeah,
okay.
It's right here. So yes, please join us on January 27th for that item. Next item up is the 708 item, which is a solicitor permit appeal request from Edward App. And maybe for members of the public, we can just explain that when people in the town of Westford appeal or apply for a solicitor permit, there's a series of criteria that our town bylaws have. The initial approving authority is the police department. There's a series of criteria in the bylaw that direct the police department, in some cases, to refuse the request, in which case we are the appealing body, so the applicant has the opportunity to appeal that to us. So what we're doing tonight is we are entertaining the appeal from the permit application from Edward Ave. We've already had an opportunity to discuss this in executive session. I guess we would now move into deliberation. And so I guess I'll invite members of the board if you have any comments or questions before we move to a vote on this. Okay. If you feel your question's been answered already, I'll entertain a motion.
Just one
Yep.
more question, I'm sorry, thank you. Mr. Epp, just along the same vein as I asked you earlier, when tree companies are doing business in my neighborhood, I don't believe I've ever seen somebody go door to door and ask for business. What typically happens is we get a letter saying, hey, we're going to be in your area on such and such a date doing work. If you need work, please contact us. Have you ever pursued that line of trying to get a lead, and is that something that would work for your organization versus a door-to-door approach?
We're a very small company, myself, my sons, and when we were working at one house here and we see some dead limbs next door, that's how we get a lot of our work. It's a very small. I've been doing it a long time, I have all the right equipment, but it's a small company.
And just as a quick follow-up.
90% of my work is just in the neighborhood, trying to do a good job, and then a neighbor sees you do a good job there, and a lot of times, get 3, 4, 5 jobs, and I'm doing them. The equipment's already there. I can do them a lot more reasonable on cost. So I depend on it, and I really need it.
Thank you.
Okay. If there are no further questions from the board, I think, and Kristen, you can correct me, what I'm looking for is a motion to either approve or deny the appeal.
That is correct.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to either approve or deny the appeal.
Make a motion to approve the appeal.
Second?
To approve the appeal. Okay.
Yes.
Made and seconded. All in favor of approving the appeal. This would mean that the license to solicit would be granted. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
I'm not sure, Chris, what?
I'm still thinking.
Might need a roll call.
So I recognize this could be put you in a difficult situation if I vote no here. But I do think that based off the information that we have available to us, whether it's customer reviews, repeated problems that we've seen, with the court system, there's a pattern here. And, you've also had issues with the town with cutting down shade trees. So I'm a little reluctant to grant an appeal on this.
May I address that issue?
Well, we're in deliberations. The motion's been made. I'll grant Chris a period to think about it.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So, I respect that you came forward, you followed the process, you were forthright about your past, and you did do a good job when you cut down the public shade tree. You did, fix that problem as well. But I do think there's alternative options for you if you weren't given the solicitor's permit to do business in Westford. So with that in mind, I think I'm going to be a no on this.
Okay, I'm going to follow up Sean's, since we sort of started and then paused, I'm going to follow Sean's recommendation and do a roll call vote. So the motion on the floor is to approve the appeal, which would mean that the license solicitor would be approved. So with that in mind, Sean.
I'm a no.
Noel.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Chris.
I'm a no.
I'm also a no, so the motion fails. So thank you. That's all for that item. We're now going to move to the 720 item.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
720, and thank you, Captain, for being here. 720 item is the town facilities, space planning, and capital needs assessment, final report and presentation. And we're going to welcome Jeff. and Rebecca both. Please come on up. So for the benefit of the public, maybe Kristen, could you just explain just briefly what this thing is, and then we'll invite the presentation.
So, back in 2023, when we were moving through town meeting, 51 Main Street was not approved for a reconstruction and redesign. We were looking at some other town buildings and the needs. I approached the board with a proposal and asked for ARPA funding to do a more comprehensive facilities assessment related to 9 town-owned buildings, knowing that the center fire station had already moved to the new fire station headquarters, knowing that the library was going to move forward with the reconstruction, and knowing that the senior center was under different study. We prepared a request for proposal with the ARPA funds that the select board allocated, and ended up hiring Tecton Architects to prepare for us a facilities assessment and our master plan, knowing that we are already space constrained and knowing that our facilities do need work. So this evening is the accumulation of that when we started with you all in, I think it was May or June of 2024, and now we're in January of 2026. It did take quite a bit of time because there was a lot of opportunity for public feedback, public comment. Our town staff got involved. There was a lot of work to review. As you'll see, this is an almost 500-page document, very comprehensive, but it really brings together a lot of things that we know today that are true. And then there will be a lot of work on the back end as well. So as we're moving through the slides, Rebecca and Jeff will outline what this report and this study is, what it is not, and then at the end we'll summarize what we have next to do as part of this. You'll also notice that this assessment informed what our capital plan requests were for the fiscal 27 budget. So our capital planning committee has already met, has reviewed those projects. Last evening, Mike Edwards and Jeff Goodwin, who are here this evening, reviewed those capital requests with the permanent town building committee. I think some of those members are also on the meeting this evening. So with that, that's a brief summary of where we were, where we are today. And we hope to accumulate this into other studies to move forward with a more comprehensive capital plan, which is one of the select board's goals and within our strategic plan as well.
So thank you, Kristen, for explaining it well. So we have a sort of an arc to thinking about how we're going to use space and over the course of the next 5 and 10 years. This is one important element. What are some of the other important elements that are coming up that will be part of that comprehensive look?
Sure. So Jeff and Rebecca will touch upon that in their presentation, but we're going through the feasibility study for the Robinson School right now. That is a huge element. The school department already prepared some of their facilities assessments as well. We have more knowledge about what we'll be moving forward with the Cameron Senior Center and projects there. So those are some of the items that we're incorporating.
Okay, so part of this is for longer term planning. In the very near term, you just mentioned near-term urgent recommendations went before the capital committee.
That's
and
correct.
town building. So some of those are showing up on our upcoming warrant.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. Any other preamble questions before we launch in? Okay, thank you. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Great, thank you very much. So, to Kristen's point, we tried
Sorry.
to, yes, please.
Mike, can we get the presentation up on these monitors, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
Kristen,
please.
Good.
Yeah.
Bell's neck.
That's, I guess, a great segue while they pull these things up. So we did want to kind of give a brief overview. I know some of you had seen us in the past when we did a quick touchdown on programming and initial existing conditions, but some, it's the first you're hearing any feedback from this report. So we are kind of recapping all 5 phases. I'm going to move along as efficiently as possible in respect of your time and the rest of your agenda tonight. But if you want to stop me and have me dive into a little bit more detail, please feel free. But again, I want to kind of keep it high level. To Kristen's point, the report is quite lengthy, but each phase is kind of summarized in the beginning, so it kind of gives you a sense of the outcomes of each of those pieces. So overall agenda, we're going to do brief introductions of who Jeff and I are and kind of the larger team that's not represented here with us today. All of our work to date, which will include, overview of some of those master plan options, but more so an overview of those capital maintenance needs, specifically the capital improvements plan for the next 10 years. We will review some of those higher priorities that were identified as a part of this study and some of those key takeaways. So I'm Rebecca Hopkins. With me tonight is Jeff McElravy. He's a principal at Tecton Architects. The two of us have been working together over 12 years doing studies just like this. So Jeff has a much longer resume than I do. But we kind of bring all of that experience. So there's a much larger team that works and touches these types of studies, including engineers and a lot of folks within our office. So what this report does, and I know this is text heavy, but we really wanted to identify what it does and what it does not do. So what this plan positions Westford to do: understand where your facilities are aging or misaligned with how the town delivers services today and plans for the future. It improves functionality and service delivery through better organization, adjacency, and shared spaces, not just more square footage. So we looked at ways to save, and I'll talk a little bit about that in programming. What spaces can be shared department to department if those needs are consistent. Prioritizing capital investment in facilities with the greatest physical risk and operational impact, kind of making those buildings move to the top of the list. Preserving flexibility by evaluating multiple planning options rather than committing to a single path. So you'll see that there's a few options in this study. We thought it was, we wanted to make sure we left flexibility in the future dependent on the results of the Robinson School study. So you'll notice that there's a few different options in this report. It really doesn't pigeonhole you into one path. You've got options as things change. It reflects the staff and community priorities. Kristen mentioned we did a lot of community conversations. We did a few workshops with the department heads. All of that is reflected in the solutions of this report. It moves from more of reactive fixes to that strategic 10-year plan. So you really have an outline of what we see as the most urgent need and what we see as, hey, this boiler is going to go in 10 years. You should keep an eye on it. That just means its useful life. It may cost you more to maintain than to replace, and just identifying that so you can plan ahead for that. What this plan does not do, it does not commit you to a single solution or project. It does not assume immediate construction or funding. We take escalation and those timelines I talked about into consideration. That's built in. It does not replace future design or permitting or public review processes. All of those would remain in place. It does not lock you into certain building sizes or layouts or even phasing. It does not preclude lower cost solutions. We talked about some different strategies such as file digitization and how that could reduce the square footage needs, the storage needs of some of the departments, and how that could benefit a future solution from a cost standpoint. And it does not include other town facility needs. As Kristen mentioned, there's other projects you're considering outside of this study that need to be worked into this overall plan, and then this would be massaged. And I'll talk a little bit about the tools that came out of this study and making sure they were usable so that this 10-year capital plan didn't end up on a shelf. You can update it in year 2 and year 3 with new projects, projects outside of this project or this study. So the 5 phases: planning, space evaluation, utilization, the actual recommendations, and the capital plan. So I'm going to talk about each of those. Overall, we assessed 9 facilities. We did integrate the museum's capital improvements as well, so you'll see that as a 10th building show up in the CIP. We created existing conditions videos, which has lived on the project website, which give a really brief synopsis of what we found in each building specifically. It is a 500+ page report, so it is lengthy, but it really tries to capture all the results. We worked with 24 different department space needs assessments in various forms. We hosted multiple workshops and community conversations, as mentioned, which included hosted surveys, which extended beyond those in-person and digital virtual conversations. We made an initial presentation to this group or your predecessors, and we had constant check-ins with a smaller working group. So a lot of work kind of went into this, but just to give you a sense of some of those critical components. So phase 1, so existing conditions. We looked at site condition, exterior condition, interior, code accessibility, life safety, building systems, and operational suitability. So we looked at each building and how it kind of shaped up against those different criteria. This is a high-level ranking of each of the buildings for each of the various categories. So looking at the building shell, looking at the mechanical system, those could be two very different conditions. We took all of that into consideration and formulated a ranking priority. This then totaled so that you could kind of get a sense of which buildings have the greatest physical condition need, which I will then now clarify a little bit later, that is different than a programmatic need. So we had a few buildings that maybe were in great physical condition, but really didn't work for the department that was using them. Or we had a building that, from a space standpoint, they were actually in pretty good shape, but there was some deficiencies with the mechanical system, for example. It was a physical issue versus a programmatic space needs issue. It was really important we kind of delineated those two, because you'll see that they don't align. So in this example, the center fire station and the 51 Main and the facilities garage had the greatest need from a physical condition standpoint. But those aren't the buildings that had the greatest programmatic need. So from a programmatic standpoint, again, we looked at site function, we looked at the interior space, programmatic, the program spaces themselves, future capacity, adjacencies, how is it being utilized today. Did a very similar assessment. This is accompanied by, lots of photos and full programming documents. So again, this is a very high-level synopsis of a very lengthy document that really dives into the needs of each of these departments. But again, ranking those, they came out slightly different. So the town hall actually and the technology department had some of the greatest programmatic needs for various reasons, with the police department as a close second. The rest had, again, maybe it was more of a physical condition issue versus a space needs issue. Give you a sense of that evaluation as it compares to their existing space. So the column on the far left is the existing space. The programmatic need, again, efficiencies exist if you were to look at digitization and things like that. And these differences highlight, does that building have capacity for the programmatic need by the department that's utilizing it today? And I think that shows why we had to start looking outside of the box, because many of these buildings were maxed out for each of those departments. So we needed to kind of look at, can we consolidate? Can we look at alternative options or other space available to kind of solve all of these different issues simultaneously? And you'll see that represented in the options. And this kind of gives you a quick sense of where those programs changed across each of these. And this can be attributed for town hall, a variety of meeting spaces, appropriate office space with separate equipment storage and designated file storage. Police department, an improved training room with the switch of the dispatch center, so improving that space and its adjacencies. Increase to active and archival record storage, so consistency there for sure, and improved patrol facilities. Technology was more dedicated staging and repair areas, improved back of house infrastructure, and really the physical condition of that building and how it lends itself to that functionality, and the importance of making sure that that is a highly resilient space. Road and Bush, looking for additional large program support areas for recreation department, which exists within that building. Cemetery kind of improvements for maintenance garage and space for public meetings. So again, all can be contributed to a lot of different things, but a high level look at kind of what we saw after the interviews with all of the different departments and how the needs identified for today and into the future shaped up against what currently exists today. Adjacencies, so we did do a fair amount of workshops, again, with the departments, understanding, kind of looking at it as a bit of a clean slate, which groups really need to be adjacent to which groups. And this was all about, identifying kind of optimally aligning those and ensuring we weren't creating any inefficiencies. If multiple departments exist together in one building, they can share break rooms, copy rooms, storage facilities, things of that nature. The more we break them up, the more we have to duplicate that space. So we wanted to make sure, one, we were clustering the right folks, and that's really important because it not only speaks to workflow efficiency, and we had conversations, is this a adjacency where you can pick up the phone, or you're in their office 5 times a day? Is this a physical connection, or can be supported by a solution with technology? But really, why these clusters can't be broken is that collaboration, that communication, and that customer service. We've thought about it not only internally, but externally. Well, if I'm a citizen and I'm coming to visit this department, is there another department that I also typically visit? Well, that would be a little inconvenient if I had to go to one building for one department and another building for another department. So really paying close attention to the internal impact and that external impact. So these give you a sense of, and this was direct feedback, working with the department heads, which of these clusters, kind of how they all started to group together. And these were maintained through all of the solutions to ensure that we didn't create any inefficiencies. So, looking at kind of where space is available for the needs. Our approach is really to optimize the use of existing space before considering the creation of new, so that's where we started. Some minor organizational adjustments and quick wins, so looking at rehoming animal control and the wellness coordinator, creating meeting space within town hall, reuse potentially of the police firearms range on the second floor of their building, solving some of those needs internally, and then looking to relocate that function elsewhere. Optimizing shared space within the community center, and looking at some digitization and consolidation of file storage. That will immediately free up space for your internal departments here at Town Hall specifically, and I think that was, as well as police, it does not solve everything, but it definitely became a part of the solution on what are some of those quick things we can do with the existing assets in place that start to alleviate some of that need. So, Town Hall really doesn't have additional space available without that digitization, so I think that's something that without that, there's really no space available at this time. The same being PD, except, repurposing space that, they feel that there's higher priority space to solve for. So again, sacrificing a programmatic element to kind of solve for a bigger need. Center Fire Station was definitely one currently unoccupied, could be leveraged as space available, and this kind of walks you through what you have and what you don't have for available space across all of these buildings. And this shows the physical condition and the programmatic needs, those two summary charts side by side. So again, where to prioritize first from a project standpoint, how you start to alleviate some of those needs either with the physical building, whether it be deferred maintenance or whether it be kind of a long-term solution. So phase 3, this was really when we started the community conversations and expanding outside of the department heads specifically. So we looked at, we used a live survey tool. So as you're a part of the kind of session, you can vote and it's live polling essentially. We can see feedback live, we can have conversations about it. One thing we talked about is we wanted to kind of, what are the priorities? What are we trying to solve with this master plan? What is the most important goals that we want to make sure that we uphold as we kind of get into the weeds of each solution. And as you're looking across town staff and the community, there were 2 shared priorities in the top 3. It varied. This was a much longer list of options, but the 2 that kind of were across the board was prioritizing based on the highest needs. So making sure that, and there was a few options we looked at where maybe it made sense to move a building off-site, but that was not the department that had the greatest need, and that project would have to occur to enable other work. So that was really a solution the group backed away from because it was prioritizing a department, it was moving a department's project up even though they didn't have the greatest need. So really kind of going back to that chart of what building has the greatest physical condition need and what department has the greatest programmatic space need, and kind of working each solution to solve for those first. So that was one thing, and then the other thing was just keeping in mind that customer experience and that customer service and not losing sight of that. And we subsequently asked more questions about, as a citizen comes to Town Hall, for example, or some of the other buildings, what do they like and what do they not like? So that was some of the feedback we received as well. We asked, what are the most significant? We wanted to know, are there buildings we should not touch? That their exterior design, they're symbolic to the town of Westford, whether it be their use or just the physical building itself. So the most significant identified was the library, Road and Bush, and Town Hall, and we expanded this kind of beyond these buildings because we wanted to understand kind of what those sacred elements are. What do we want to make sure we're maintaining? And maintaining similar use, and that was an important one for us, is that there was we heard from the community that maintaining a town hall function at Town Hall was important. It's not only that the building was important, significant, but that it was a town functions and town services. So that you'll see in the solution, we maintained town functions at this building through all of the options. 88% only interact with one department when visiting Town Hall. So they typically are actually going only to one group. So it's less common for a taxpayer to necessarily go to multiple departments when they're visiting. With that being said, it would be much more common for an outside contractor to visit one or more than one departments when they're here. So just thinking about, these are taxpayers, these are citizens doing this voting, kind of again, thinking about that community service aspect and making sure we're not impacting that negatively. And they preferred those multiple points of contact. That was kind of split 50-50 on whether or not a single point of contact would be more advantageous or a multiple point of contact. And that impacts all of the solutions for town hall. Co-locating departments with improved convenience. So folks liked the idea of including the technology department and or school department administration with other town administration services. 49% likely to use more digital or online services. Again, a little split. Just looking for those options to help offset some of those space needs. And then nearly 40% feel parking and accessibility are the most challenging when visiting town hall. So that was another thing that kind of came to light as a part of this. So reimagining parking, wayfinding, accessibility through possible development of this campus and kind of some of the other facilities that you have. Phase 4, so this is really where we got into the specific options, and these I'm going to breeze through because we could talk all day on each of them, and there are multiples. So at a very high level for town hall, you will see a scheme to renovate town hall. These are schemes A and B. They include all buildings on this site, and there are multiple iterations of both of them. Police department is included in that. Police department does stay at the PD for all schemes, but how we kind of renovate and add to it slightly changes. Center fire, similar. How can we leverage 51 Main, whether it's removed, whether it's renovated, and I know that became a part of the capital improvements plan, a use for that, but that really ties to solutions A and B. The technology department, integrating that into the town hall departments, so it's that existing asset would then be available for reuse or sale, but they are integrated in all of the solutions on campus. Facilities garage, renovate and build some new office meeting spaces, and that is scheme C, specifically addresses the facilities garage. DPW really had minimal needs due to its age and kind of the future growth that was embedded there. So there might be some minor modifications, add a desk here or there, depending on if the town were to include town fleet maintenance that could impact their garage space, but it was pretty minimal from an overall space needs standpoint. Road and Bush, again, just kind of sharing some of those programmatic spaces with various town departments, which kind of already occurs, and the recreation department is up in that building as well, so we did include that as a part of all of these assessments. And then asset maintenance and capital improvements for both Frost and Old Nab, and the cemetery, really just looking at a renovation and addition there as scheme D. So you'll see A, B, C, and D with various options. So A, again, looks at that expansion of town campus, a few different options for parking. We're aware of some of those projects that connect to the Road and Bush Community Center in the back for parking, so that is integrated into M1A, and really just kind of looking at various options and how we reuse, and in this case, demolish and build new and annex where 51 Main Street is. These are the floor plans that were associated in much greater detail in the report, so you can kind of review all of those different spaces and adjacencies. Scheme B looked at the utilization of Abbott Elementary School if it were to become available as a result of the Robinson School study. So again, in this case, this is very dependent on the results of that study, and although it had a lot of advantages, no one in the group felt good about this being the only option. So this is one of many. The first kind of looks at just utilizing this campus as it exists today, and B kind of looks a little bit outside of the box in relocating some of those town services to Abbott and better leveraging this space, which could include the demolition of 51 Main, given the kind of putting additional services at Abbott that would free up space here on campus to be used in different ways. So those are just the floor plans looking at each of those buildings as a part of that. C, again, was the facilities garage, looking at, there's an existing salt shed on site. If the PD were to utilize their firing range internal to their building, a standalone could be relocated here. They do make modular options that could move off-site, and that could happen at any point in time. It does look at rebuilding the animal control area, which is currently positioned behind the salt shed and is not usable. And it looks at kind of the modifications to the facilities garage. So a few different pieces here coming together, but also site plan and floor plan included. And then same with the cemetery. So the facilities 10-year capital plan. And this gives you just a really quick view, and I wanted to highlight that it is a working document. I know I mentioned that, but it's really important. We do a lot of these studies, and it's so common that they just end up on a shelf. They're not workable enough. You can't change them. You can't add items. And once you get beyond that first year, it's challenging to maintain the efficacy of that document. So this just gives you a sense of, if I were to add an item, what's that look like? So everything's really built in. It has a summary and instructions right at the beginning tab. So department personnel who are going to be responsible for maintaining this can really understand, how each of the pieces work, how each of the tabs work. There's a master cost index, so it has all of the costs in one space. If you update them, they're then tied to all the line items in the buildings. If you change the priority, it moves the cost of that building into that year range. So if I say, okay, instead of a priority 1, an immediate need, it's actually 3 to 5 years out. It's now a 3. If I just change the 1 to a 3, it automatically moves the cost into the right bucket and it escalates it appropriately. All that's built in. So there's no additional math. It's just maintaining the items and the prioritization. And really, we kind of tested this a few different ways with that smaller working group, making sure that it is kind of workable, flexible, can be modified, and all of those other projects outside of this study and report can be added. And then there's a lot of different charts, which is important to me specifically because although that overall plan is great, it doesn't present very well. It's very data heavy. It has a ton of great information, but not everybody cares that we've got, contingency built into those numbers. So these charts really summarize in different ways based on who you're communicating to. So do I just want to see what I'm responsible for in 3 to 5 years? Do I just want to see what I need to do for this particular building? Do I want to see all of my electrical across all of my buildings? Maybe there's an advantage to doing all of that at once. So it kind of looks at it either by discipline, by building, by year range, so that you can kind of use each of these. And it also includes major capital projects. So outside of the capital improvements plan, all of those options I just talked about are priced as much larger projects. So here is a screenshot of that. So these again are escalated pretty far out into that kind of 3 to 5 year range, but you'll see that stabilization and reuse of 51 Main being identified as that immediate need. But those other projects kind of move out into the future. And again, there's a lot of options on the table for various schemes, for efficiencies, for cost scaling, all of those things. So from a maintenance standpoint, overall needs, if the buildings are listed on the left, the first 2 columns are really that 0 to 3 year range. There's a fair amount here. Now that is escalated out, but it just gives you a sense of overall what is included in each of these. And I'll give a quick breakdown of what's in each of those buckets. So if you look at the center fire station 51 Main, in 0 to 1 years, you've got some exterior work, some interior work, fire protection, plumbing, but some of the plumbing can wait a little further. Mechanical, same thing. Those systems could be okay for the immediate future, but in 1 to 3 years, you're going to have some replacement of equipment. Same thing for electrical. So it goes through, again, each of those buildings and highlights kind of where the needs fall in each of these various categories. And the CIP document goes into specifics. So it'll say like new boiler versus just mechanical. These are the bigger buckets, but it really gets into the specifics of each item for each building. And so those are all of those. Another thing we included above and beyond kind of the site, the exterior, interior, and the systems was also, we did also include things on accessibility. So that was fully integrated. You guys did a separate report that was fully integrated, as well as the Westford Museum. I mentioned that CIP was also integrated. We also looked at town overall improvements. So things outside of these buildings that should also be included in a CIP, including some of that document digitization, including technology infrastructure upgrades, things that are a little bit more generic. ADA compliance, if there's things that came out of the report that you need to improve, security or safety improvements, things like that aren't necessarily building specific, but are a little bit more overall facility improvement specific. So those are included. EV charging, things of that nature. That might be a project across multiple buildings. Those are also in the CIP. So the highest priorities, the stabilization and reuse of 51 Main. That document digitization and record management, just due to the amount of square footage it could save, we felt is a high priority. And then really focusing on those kind of immediate improvements, those quick wins we identified, and those kind of deferred maintenance items, those capital improvements, those upgrades to those specific schools that have the greatest physical condition need. So I'll just recap a little bit of what is included in the stabilization and reuse of 51 Main. So that improvement includes new asphalt shingle roof, new vinyl siding, interior clean out and demolition, specifically focused on that first floor, framing, drywall, ceiling, insulation, so kind of laying out specific spaces, new gutters, electric baseboard and hot water heater on the first floor, new bathroom fixtures and miscellaneous plumbing to upgrade those, and then office bathroom and kind of hall flooring and a new kennel. So that really kind of makes that usable to help offset some of those space needs at Town Hall. It makes it safe, and it upgrades the kind of existing building in order to allow for its use. In the future, you really still have options. Obviously, there would be an investment, so that could impact that solution in the future. You could demo it, you could keep it, you could maintain its renovation, you could add on to it. All of those options really allow for that to this investment to kind of it doesn't preclude you from doing any of those things in the future. This would really just be kind of a phase one, and then there's a phase two. For current program space, so currently you have about 4,000 square feet of paper storage. That equates to millions of dollars in our world to build and maintain that physical space. So just something to consider. If you were to, you're not going to recover all of that, but we see an opportunity to regain some of that, and just looking across the board. So key takeaways. Deferred maintenance is the most immediate and unavoidable issue. So across multiple facilities, so focusing on that in the near term. Space needs and facility conditions don't always align. I think I kind of highlighted that. Some buildings are undersized, others are physically deteriorating. So focusing on those fixes to maintain that asset, and then helping eliminate some of those, the pressures at those undersized buildings. 51 Main represents a time-sensitive decision point. Kind of near-term stabilization and or demolition is kind of required to preserve the safety and kind of future options for long-term planning. Digitization and space optimization can materially reduce future building needs, and the 10-year capital plan provides a realistic and flexible framework, allowing the town to address those urgent needs while preserving those long-term choices. So it kind of gives clarity on what needs attention now, but really there's a lot of flexibility on what comes next. So next steps, and Kristen, if you want to close, I know that you said you want to kind of talk about next.
We were talking about what this report is, what it is not, and then how do we use this in our future planning. So we want to advance our fiscal 27 priority investments using this report to back those capital requests. We want to integrate our school, our energy, our ADA, and our prior facility studies into this Tecton capital improvement plan, that Excel spreadsheet that you saw, to create a comprehensive town and school capital framework. We want to expand the capital plan beyond the buildings. We've been talking with our executive leadership team and department heads to include our vehicles, our infrastructure, IT, and our outdoor assets. And then apply financial and staffing constraints. So we know what these costs are today, we know what the escalation is, but we also know that we have fiscal constraints and staff capacity. So we want to model that out and provide the best analysis moving forward to provide a realistic and prioritized capital improvement plan. And then we want to revisit the major space decisions after the Robinson-Abbott feasibility study comes out, knowing where that project is going and using this plan as that foundation for future design and public process. So really this report is that foundation. We are nowhere near the finish line. We are along that path, which is going to take a lot of effort and organization from our team, but we do know where we are going and we're confident that we can get it done. It just will take time.
And money.
And money, yes, and money.
A little bit. Well, first, congratulations to Rebecca for creating a very concise summary of what was an almost overwhelming document. Size. I opened it up and it took like a minute for my computer to open it. Just real quick, just for the public, I'm wondering if people in the public might be wondering why would we do separate studies for town facilities versus school buildings? And just a quick point that in order to get funding from the Massachusetts State School Building Authority, you actually have to do this kind of study under their purview. You're required to do it separately. So we bow to the future potential funding and do something that maybe is slightly inefficient. But as Kristen mentioned, we're going to combine those now and bring those together. And for the public, can you give us, Kristen, just a reminder timeline of when we're going to learn about the Robinson Abbott?
Yeah, absolutely. So tomorrow is a big milestone. The request for services for our designers are due tomorrow. So anyone who wishes to bid on that. And then we go to the MSBA on February 5th to actually pick the designer. And then it'll probably take about a month to get that contract into place. So anticipate the designer being in place, working with the Robinson School Building Committee, the staff, and other parties by the March timeframe. And then we're 18 months through study, which will have much rigorous, review with teachers, staff, administration, the public, those designers, and then there will be solutions presented, and then we will be going forward to town meeting with those solutions, whether it be a renovation and expansion, or a new site at that point in time. So it is an extensive time frame to go through this process, and we are regulated through the Mass Building Authority on those requirements, so that is why it does take a long time to do that.
So before we know what Plan A with regards to that effort is, it's 2028, 2029, it's 3 years or
Yes.
so.
Yeah, probably town meeting 2028.
Okay. Just for people to know, because one of the major puzzle pieces here as we look at the future is if the recommendation is to basically redistrict and build a new building, which is different than the buildings that we have now, it could offer up an opportunity to repurpose the historic Abbott School. And that's an interesting idea. We're not going to know if that's the recommendation for a while. So we're planning for that 10-year horizon, but for the next, say, 3 years, we're trying to operate where we've got good optionality. We're going to do things that make sense, that could support any of the various longer-term outcomes.
Right. If there were any town operations going over to Abbott at any point in time, that would be on a 10-year horizon, because you would have to build you'd have to do this process with Robinson, build it, move in there, do any renovations possible at Abbott, and then move over there. So we're probably looking at a 7 to 10-year horizon, and that's why we're proposing these interim solutions such as 51 Main Street Stabilization Project and other solutions.
Okay, and before we go to board questions and questions from the public, the kind of immediate issues which show up in the upcoming planning that we're doing right now, very near term, is basically digitization, so free up space. We're planning, we have an investment there, and then the idea of I guess shoring up 51 Main, really for a different set of uses than we've considered before. There may be some dissonance in the community about what they've seen before about 51 Main as an appropriate fire station versus shoring it up for the purposes of animal control.
And storage and other uses,
and
yes.
other things. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from the board about just sort of setting the strategic table here of what we're talking about and why? Because it is a lot of moving pieces before we get into specific. Yeah, Chris.
So you actually tackled a lot of my questions with your run-up. It was very well done, so thank you. I think important is what we've talked about is letting this not become, a 500-page document that sits on a shelf somewhere. And so we're already taking action. It sounds like for fiscal year 27, we're going to be taking to heart some of the recommendations. Any ideas just the next couple of years out to just where you might be headed? Or is it still going to be 51 Main, or are you thinking other buildings or spaces that you're going to try to address?
So all of these have priority 1, 2, 3, and 4. I know Jeff Goodwin is here from facilities and Mike Edwards. They have much more intimate knowledge about the out-year projects, if you'd like to.
Just at a very high level for the next 2 years.
Super
just
high
so that-
level for
yeah.
the next 2 years. I think our focus is on catching up on maintenance. We are hyper-focused on building envelopes and roofs. Building controls across our entire campus is a huge need for us right now. Because
why?
Primarily because we have multiple failures at them right now, and we are spending an enormous amount of staff time that we don't have to run our buildings. You've seen the pictures of the controls with the dial-up phones that run them, and we're end of life on a lot of that equipment. So that's actually a major project we hope to bring to town meeting. But really, the next couple of years, while we wait for some of these other, the Robinson study, kind of knowing where we're going, we need to be focused purely on maintenance and catch-up. So, and obviously continuing all the energy efficiency stuff, getting wrapped up with the library, freeing up some space where we can. When we do get to a point where we have Robinson direction established, we may bring up the conversation of, all right, what's the next step for 51 Main? Because that does present several different directions we could go in terms of meeting some space needs, letting it kind of just be what it is and be storage, animal control. We'll reevaluate in a year or two after we've gotten a lot of these other pieces done, but staff capacity is limited as far as what we can tackle, so maintenance is our priority right now.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board about strategy or what we're doing? I guess one other question I have, the thing that makes me, feel like I'm bleeding to death is considering our IT situation.
Yes.
Which is a gigantic, it's just unacceptable that we ask people to work in that situation. It doesn't sound like there's anything in this nearer term set of options to address that. Do I understand that correctly? Our best minds can't think of another way to house them until we know the longer term direction.
Right, without a major investment project. Right now, in speaking with the IT staff, and Rebecca and Jeff have spoken with them as well, to move them another time either to leased space or for us to build space and then move them again, they don't want that to happen. And we know that they have some floodplain situation and some other issues, but we have just replaced some of their HVAC, so they have more stable environments there for heating and cooling. And I don't know if you want to speak to any of that further related to IT.
I mean, I think that kind of sums up the conversations we've had with them in the past, is they want to move to their forever home and they're willing to wait for the right situation. If as much as we need them to be integrated into the daily operations in Town Hall, they are one department that does operate fairly well remotely and by distance. So their space need is so great that we really have no way to meet it without a massive investment somewhere. But not knowing what we're going to do here, it just doesn't make a huge amount of sense to do something temporary for them at this point. So,
Other thoughts? Yeah, Chris?
So along the lines of the technology department, I don't think we've mentioned another sort of elephant in the room, and that's the fire station over on Oak Hill. So maybe speak briefly about where we think that's going to land in the greater scheme of things.
Sure, so we definitely have reviewed that with Tecton. They're aware of that. That was under a different study, so that's why it wasn't incorporated into that. They've done some conceptual plans there. We know what the preliminary cost would be related to that, but we have not gone to a higher level of design as we had the library in play and then the Robinson in play. So that really falls into, we need to incorporate that into our capital plan now, so incorporate it into this spreadsheet and understand where that building project lies within our overall 10-year plan, so we can let residents know what is coming next.
And when do you anticipate being able to do that effort?
I would say,
I mean, I think our biggest issue really is needing to get a better handle on when the major expenditures need to happen so we can figure out where the fire station fits in that. I don't think we want another situation where we are making a decision on a $15 to $20 million investment without a very good idea about what the next 10 decisions of $20 million investments are.
Sure, but can that facility last that long? I mean, the pictures that we saw previously are pretty dire.
It's dicey.
in rough shape.
Okay.
The building is definitely in rough shape, but I think we need to look at, we've got a massive roof project coming up on Westford Academy. That is a huge expense, both in time for Jeff's ability to manage it. We've got our space needs we're kind of putting to the back burner until we get some of these other issues dealt with. So it's definitely a high priority, but that's about all we know right now.
Okay, so the balancing act is, just to follow Chris's point, is in terms of compromising the mission, we feel like we can continue to operate out of that space, at least in the basic functional way for now.
it's not ideal, we know that, we
Yeah, no, I
recognize that,
mean,
but we're trying to balance all of
We all have to
the
make
spending priorities, yeah.
Natural to make trade-offs, and I hate to ask people to be uncomfortable in a not great situation, but sometimes we have to do that while we're waiting. So.
Yeah, I think when we get the bigger picture together about all the other asset investments we have to make and kind of There's not really a decision on the fire station that impacts a huge amount of other decisions in terms of where people would locate space, et cetera. It's a question of affordability. So when does it make the most sense to take that debt issuance on? And I don't think we're going to be at that point for a year or more until we get really the full financial model built out of the things we absolutely know we have to do, that's one of them.
I'm sorry.
No.
Just keep
I
feeding it
have one
on.
other question too. So let's do another round. We'll go to the
Yeah,
public.
I mean, I just want to hear about school administration. I mean, obviously Millennium is well past end of life. Thoughts on how that plays into the discussion, or is it just basically more of the same? We'll fit it in where we can. And
No, school administration, I think, is absolutely part of the Robinson conversation, because that would be an ideal.
of course, but
fitment
can they
within-
last potentially 10 years, right? With the space that we know is already well past its design life for.
Jeff,
So
what are your
we are
thoughts
going to
the
come up
building?
on some real critical conversations.
Jeff, do you want to just come to the mic
Yeah,
so
we-
people from?
We have, yeah.
Yeah.
Hearing on, we got hearing on Zoom, hearing on cable, and hearing in the room, so thanks.
Jeff Goodwin, Director of
Thanks, Jeff.
Facilities. So yeah, the reality is the Millennium was a temporary building, and here we are 20 years later. We have leaking roofs, we have HVAC equipment that is constantly in need of maintenance. I would anticipate that within the next few years, we're gonna have to have some hard conversations about what we need to do with the Millennium to get through to that 10-year point. We have siding that's gonna need to be addressed, the windows are a problem. In its present condition, I don't foresee it lasting the full 10 years. So that is a reality that we're gonna have to balance those priorities with all the other priorities we have around town. And they are numerous, so.
While you're standing there, so I think the thing I've had to get used to is this idea of like, is this good money after bad, right? Like, we're spending money maintaining, we're repurposing 51 Main, which we knew was insufficient for various things.
Yep.
So the thing I've had to get my head around, and I think I'm there, but I had to think about it a little bit, was what do we think we can get out of 51 Main over time if we invest $330,000 to shore it up? And I know we're not preparing it to be the future fire station of Westford. We're talking about a very limited set of activities, but just, I'm a little bit surprised, I'm not surprised, I'm glad, I guess, that we feel like that amount of money can stabilize it and make it useful for those set of purposes for 10 years, or however, whatever the horizon we're thinking of. So I guess the question is, if I am a member of the public too, but if you're going to explain to some member of the public who only remembers seeing pictures of ceilings falling down in 51 Main, like, what's good about it, and what's bad about it, and what makes us think we can repurpose it for that amount of money to a useful purpose?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, I think the conversation around 51 Main is really, do you tear it down, or do you extend the ability to make a decision on a potential reuse down the road? And that's really what this stabilization and reuse project is. It's, we can invest money, we can get limited use out of it. We can continue the storage use, we can continue to use it as a police garage, we can continue to use it for events, potential voting, meetings, things of that nature. We can get animal control in there because their building is now completely defunct and about to be torn down. And we can preserve the decision for a few years down the road when we have an understanding of what's happening with Robinson. That's kind of the point where I think we're going to be asking all of those big questions. How does the fire station fit in? What do we see for that building? At that point, you could renovate it if we decided, well, we're going to move forward with Abbott being the big picture for meeting a lot of our space needs. Maybe you tear it down, maybe you rehab the top floor and do another minimal renovation, maybe you rebuild the whole thing. There's a lot of options. None of them are going to be available if we continue to let it deteriorate or if we tear it down. So that's really the argument around putting that building back into service, is getting some limited use and preserving the decision.
I think I understand the argument. What I had to learn a little bit is the fact that it's possible that we could buy 10 years of limited specific use for $330,000. So I guess I'm just asking, like, you did the assessment.
Yeah, I mean,
That makes a ton of sense to you.
there was discussions earlier about envelope, and the number of the items that were listed on there as the top priorities are envelope issues. Making sure the roof is sound, making sure the walls are sound, so that we're not getting water infiltration. These are the things that destroy buildings. Going back and dealing with ceilings and and, you know, drywall partitions to create some space and usable space. This is fairly inexpensive work. We're not, you know, it's not high level to finish, but the envelope is the essential piece in my view.
And the structure's solid.
But to
Structure
get to a
is
point
good.
where you could actually move people in, it sounded like, you know, heating, HVAC,
For animal
electrical,
control.
like there's a lot more, like if we're gonna use it for personnel, there's a lot more expense.
Correct.
Right.
If we look at the top floor, there's a lot more expense. What we're talking about with this project is really just rehabbing the former dispatch area and making that a suitable, usable, totally self-contained space. We would be essentially mothballing the upstairs and not even decommissioning, just leaving shut off all the rest of the systems. We can get a corner of that building to be fully operational with a very minimal amount of money.
Okay.
And truthfully, you know, and I think Jeff would agree, and both Jeffs really, getting bodies in there, even if it's just animal control, is a good move for the long term of that building. Having a presence in that building, having regular activity in that building will help us to keep an eye on it. So that's always something, you know, a vacant building tends to fall apart, even if it's water-free.
Okay. I saw a few other hands. Yeah, Sean?
Yeah, Kristen, I was wondering if you could touch on the likelihood, or I guess timeline of us digitizing everything, right? Like, maybe I'm being a little novice here, but it strikes me that that's kind of some low-hanging fruit, right?
Yes.
We
Yep.
don't have to do a tremendous amount of rehabilitation or something like that, unless I'm misjudging how much it would cost to do things like that.
Right, so the select board at the time authorized a certain amount of dollars to digitize for the assessor's office, and they were very successful. All of their records online now have saved a ton of space in their specific office. What I've requested from the capital planning committee and is shown in the capital budget request for fiscal '27 moving forward is $100,000 for the next 5 years to get us through that backlog. So we would not be doing everything all at once. We don't have the staff capacity to do that, nor the budget to do that. But we want to make incremental efforts towards that and making sure that we're doing it in a way that is going to be successful for the future. We know, you know, and I'll just use this, we used VCR tapes, and then we use CDs, and now we use USB drives. So we want to make sure when we're digitizing that we're planning for the next 20 to 40 years or even longer, and making sure we're doing that process correctly. So we are laying out a plan to do that over the next 5 years to get all of those documents digitized.
So realistically, to do what has been suggested in this assessment plan, right, to free up the amount of space that what was it?
4,000 square.
4,000 square feet. We're looking at 5 years to be able to do something.
Potentially,
like that.
and again, that's because of financial constraints, right?
Okay.
You know, we could do $500,000 in 1 year, but there are other maintenance priorities, and I didn't feel that it was prudent to do just digitization when we have roofs failing and boilers failing and windows,
Sure.
you know, not secured. So I just want to make sure that we're being strategic along the way.
Got it.
I know that, you know, that 4,000 square feet, some of it's more valuable real estate, so
We would start there.
expect that you'd be focusing on the more valuable real estate, but it was eye-opening walking around the buildings and seeing all the places where documents are stored. It was
Sure.
a significant amount of documentation, and, you know, we went through a relocation ourselves just a couple of years ago, and what a big difference it made when we got everything scanned.
I think another point, Sean, just on the doing a digitization project, it leads to, you want to be very, I'm not going to say slow with the process, but you need to take your time because it is a huge lift on staff. And as you're doing it, it goes hand in hand with process improvements. So you're not just scanning things, you're redeveloping processes to make them electronic. That may put a big drain on, you know, IT resources for the time where they're making those things work. So it's very difficult to do one successfully just by throwing money at it, because you really do have to take your time, be very, very responsible with the way you're approaching the tie-in between digitization to save space and digitization to improve process. So, you know, being very strategic about it.
Oh, yeah, please.
If I may, one other thing to consider is there will be some documents that cannot be digitized. So it's important to note that there will be some documents that you have to maintain a physical copy. So of that you may not get all of that 4,000. You'll have to prioritize and determine what those documents are by department, and then designating those file storage spaces. So again, I just want to make a note of that there will be some documents that you can't fully digitize.
Got it.
So.
Other questions for the board before we go to the public?
Can I just follow up on the digitization? I assume that as part of digitizing these files, there's also substantial organization
Yes.
and
Yes.
will we be able to increase the availability to the public per se of these documents?
Yes,
So
we will.
search capabilities and things of that nature?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Instead of someone saying today, can I get a copy of this order of conditions, and then Matt has to go to the basement and come up and scan it and email it to the public, he would have access to automatically email it, or we may have a system in place where the residents can automatically go into our GIS system and access those records. So that is in the plan.
Nice.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
great, thank you.
Probably one example we can give you just how quickly your priorities can change on digitization is, I don't think we would have said a year ago, fire department would have been our highest priority for digitization until they had their grease trap failure, and we had to move all of these old plans into their training room, and hey, they now really want to do that digitization. So, that's going to be a process change. It's, well, we can make these plans available for this department. We can make them available for the health department. We can make them available for the public. So it's an interesting process to go through.
I think, Sean, do you see your hand?
Yeah, just one more kind of overall comment, which is that I've noticed it's been brought up a lot that we have to wait and see what happens with Robinson, right? I guess my one concern with that would be, is there being some thought put into what happens if Robinson turns out to be nothing, right? I mean, because it's a real possibility. And I think that we handled it tremendously well with the override, right? Like there was two budgets being good. There was always a backup plan, or it's supposed to our Pat B. I just wonder, is there thought being put into that, and there's discussions as to that behind the scenes?
Yeah, so that's options A1, and
Got
A2.
it.
So
Okay,
those are there, yes.
thanks.
And we have the cost estimates and the escalation and all of that.
Okay, but in terms of prioritization as to,
I think
Yeah.
we're focused, as Mike said, for years
Yeah.
1 through 3, while Robinson is ongoing. Our prioritization is on what is existing, going to fail or broken, and
Sure.
not building any new or doing any huge renovations. We'll have that information in the next 18 to 20 months on Robinson to know if we're going to move forward, most likely on options A1, A2, B, or something totally different.
right? Got
Yeah,
it.
that's the right fork in the road to think about is, we're either going off to versions A or versions B based on what we find out from Robinson.
We have plenty to keep us busy in the meantime while we wait for that. So.
Okay, let me open up to the public. Are there questions or comments from the public about space utilization? Anything online?
I don't see anything online.
Okay.
People are missing out.
I got so excited about space
Yeah.
utilization. All right, if there are any other comments from the board, we'll move on to the next agenda item, and we'll thank our presenters for today.
Thank you very much.
Anything else before we thank the folks from Tecton?
No, we'll be using this document a lot. So you'll be sick of hearing from us related to this in our capital planning efforts. And I just want to personally thank Tecton as well. It's been a pleasure to work with them. They've gone above and beyond and have been a great partner with the town of Westford. So thank you very
Great, well,
much.
thank you,
Great
Jeff.
job.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Great, have a good night. Next item up is 805, old new business. This is review and vote of select board and committee appointments and liaisons. And Kristen, I'll confess to be a little bit confused. Just all we're discussing tonight is this box on the agenda.
Yes, so when we went through the board and committee liaisons back in second meeting in May, I believe, or June, when we had Noel and Sean join us, we did not take select board membership for the 35 Town Farm Property Task Force, and I thought it would be prudent to have a select board member take that position. It was formerly select board member Hazelton in that seat.
Okay, so if someone is willing and excited to step in tonight, we could do that, or we could just sort of have people think on that, and we can come back in our next meeting to decide.
Well, I was going to ask, I'm not familiar, or I'm not up to date, I should say, with what's going on with that committee.
Yeah.
Ellen, are you still, could you maybe give a brief update on where you think things are heading and where you think select board, participation would be necessary? Just to set time frame?
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Ellen Hardy, Chair of the 35 Town Farm Road Task Force. We're waiting to hear from Chelmsford Housing Choice as to whether or not the final funding has come through. But our task force was tasked with both following it through the RFP process and renovation and construction. So we are at the moment in a wait mode, waiting for that funding, so it will go forward. But our task force will be involved in every step of the way. So at the moment, if you choose to be on that board, it will be waiting and along with us. But when the funding comes through, our committee will be working closely with Choice on the town's behalf.
From a time commitment perspective, would the committee be once a month? Is it more frequent than that?
We really don't know the answer to that because our role would be so different in that capacity than it had been when we were actually helping the Board of Selectmen put together the RFP in order to have that awarded 5 years ago this month, almost to the day, to Choice in January of 2021. So we have not even met except for once before a town meeting when there was funding recommended for additional CPC money for the town farm.
Yep.
So we meet as needed, Chris, but we're really just there to be a sounding board and reflect the town's priorities.
And when things get going, Ellen, do you think that most of these meetings are going to take place during the day, or do you see them being?
They never have. All of our meetings have been in the evening, but I think we will just adapt. We will be chameleon-like. Whatever is needed for that and whatever works for the members of the commission, the task force, we can accommodate that.
Okay, thanks, Chris, and thank you all.
Thank you,
for
Alan.
helping us understand. So I guess with that in mind, I'll entertain anyone if they feel ready to step forward. Otherwise, we'll put it on next agenda and come back to it.
I can take it.
Okay, is anybody else interested, just in case it's competitive, we could.
Don't let me dissuade anybody else from jumping in.
Okay, if folks are comfortable with that, then thank you, Chris.
Yeah, for sure. I can always jump on committees where you're just
We're doing
waiting
nothing.
for something to happen.
Can add 0 to your workload.
Thank you so very much.
Okay.
Thanks, Ellen.
Thank you, Ellen. Thanks, Ellen.
Okay, next up is our 807 item, which is minutes for approval. For release, we're looking for, I guess, any questions or discussion first on November 25th, 25, December 9th, 25, or December 23rd, 2025.
look good.
Oh, okay. If there are no comments, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll also discuss for release the
I
executive
should
session.
actually table that because we didn't talk about that in executive session, so I'll put that on the next
Okay.
agenda.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen. Good point. Okay, 809 agenda item is board reports and updates. Any further boards reports and updates? I guess on our cavalcade of bringing committees in, what's coming up, and are there any follow-up to recent appearances?
So I've asked for the Board of Library Trustees and the Permanent Town Building Committee to come to your next meeting, January 27th, to give an update on the library project.
Okay.
And the Permanent Town Building Committee could also give an update on just what they've been working on. It's been primarily the library project. They're also kind of trying to rethink what their role may be in the future. They also will have a request to appoint an alternate member at that meeting as well.
Oh, cool.
So that's a full plate for that meeting, and then if we scheduled anything beyond that?
Yeah, Chris and I discussed this yesterday. We are forecasting out, the 30th anniversary, 300th anniversary, I keep doing that, 300th anniversary committee, potentially the Conservation Commission to talk about Stony Brook conservation land, potentially Affordable Housing Trust to talk about some housing opportunities. So we are working through that schedule.
Okay. And I know the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, we are still looking for an area that school committee and select board and that committee may team up on as sort of a focus area. When we have committees come in, we want to hear what they're up to. We want to ask how we can support them and see if there's an area of particular focus we can engage on. So that's still in the works as a follow-up item to their appearance here. And that'll just come to us for discussion. Obviously, it's our decision, school committee decision about if we want to pick something like that to work on. Okay. If we're through with that, the 10 item is the town manager's report.
So the first item next weekend is the annual Connect 351, which was the annual Mass Municipal Association meeting. And the town of Westford is being asked to vote at both the Mass Municipal Association annual meeting and the Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Association annual meeting. I do plan to be in attendance for those meetings, but it does require that the select board authorize me to represent the select board on those votes. So I'd be looking for for your authorization related to attending and voting at those meetings on behalf of the town.
What's the nature of the vote you take, Kristen?
So the nature of the vote is to appoint board of directors to each of those organizations, as well as the Mass Municipal Association does have one item related to fiscal stability, which I had forwarded the perfect storm report and those other follow-up reports.
Okay, excellent. So it's largely like a committee member type of voting
That's
authority. And if there's a specific issue that we're asked to endorse as a town or something, we would have a chance to check in with you on
That's
that before we
correct,
do it. Okay.
yes.
Thanks for explaining that. When we keep going and see if
Sure.
there are any other questions.
The next item, and Ray Dick is on the line if you have questions, is a memorandum of understanding between the Westford Health Department and the Massachusetts Health Officers Association under the Pathways to Local Public Health program to host a community college student intern. Today, I did provide you with the markup that Town Council did review that memorandum of understanding. They're comfortable with that. This is no cost to the town of Westford to host the intern. This program actually pays for them to intern with us, and they also pay the town $10,000 as being the host agent.
Sounds like a great program.
Yes. And then we have 3 purchase orders. The first is for Motorola for radio equipment supplies to outfit the new engine, which you approved at a previous meeting in the amount of $16,386.63. That comes out of the town meeting authorization. Then the next is for Mayor Services, Inc. for the replacement motor for the Fletcher well in the amount of $13,244 as requested by the Water Department. And finally is Island Technical Services LLC for upfitting 3 new cruisers in the amount of $45,000 as requested by the Police Department. I do want to notice the Police Department and Mike Edwards, we were able to put the 3 old cruisers up on our public surplus website and got over $11,000 for those cruisers when the trade-in value was going to be $700 each. So we are seeing a lot of success with that program, and we'll continue to let the board know about that. So that concludes purchase orders.
Okay, any questions on these items under town manager's report? If there are none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any questions about correspondence?
There's no correspondence today.
No, well, there we go. So I don't even need a motion to waive the reading of correspondence. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chris was safe.